There you go. Welcome. Well, last couple of days, we heard a lot about artificial intelligence, from its origin to what it needs to do, from our colleagues here. Our friend Ashot thinks AI is going to remain as an assistant. I wholeheartedly disagree with that notion. Today, I don't want to talk to you about AI in particular. I want to talk to you about how did we go from AE to AI? And AE here is Adam and Eve. From great leaves to creating technology. So I wanted to speak to you a little bit about origin of technology, eras, and then how we interact with technology and how it impacts us and what's the future of human along with technology. This is why I said I really don't agree that AI is going to remain as an assistant to us for very long. I'm asked to press right when I'm going to do this, so I'm pressing right. And it works not. Maybe because I'm pressing at this guy. I should press. Oh, it does work. Oh, okay. Okay. So, part one will be discussion about technology. Let's talk about eras. Nomadic hunter and gatherer, this is the first time when we talk about technology in a human of some sort. So these are regular tools that you find, right? You use wood sticks and whatever it may be, or a stone. And then eventually you get to a point of controlling fire. And this part is important, and I'll get to it a bit later, why I like to generally speak about fire. So that will come later. And then we go to Metal Ages, and if we stay for a second on fire, if you don't have fire, forget about Metal Ages, because you need to heat this up for you to be able to do anything with Metal Ages. And if you don't know how to control fire, this gets out of your way. Then we go to the first machines. All right, so this is, let me see if I can take it back. All right, I took it completely back. Oh, I see what's happening. You know what's happening? When I press, it actually doesn't work. I think there's a human there just pretends that this thing works. Is this right? Am I right? Okay. You guys. Artificial intelligence. That's actually how first artificial intelligence was. You pretend that you're doing. So this is when we invented clocks. The first machines. So I'll click. Let's see what happens. Let's see if my chip works. Works. Very good. The beginnings of quantity production. This part is also important. Okay, so up until this era, people worked in their homes. So there was no concept of you're going to wake up 8 o'clock in the morning and go to some kind of an office environment or some kind of a factory environment. This is small people, kind of contractors of sort, if you think of them. They go to some sort of a main house, get the stuff, take it home before this era, and they work. Now, the beginnings of quantity production, this is where the humanity is slowly progressing into the civilization that we know today. The full flowering of this steam age, and then combustion engine comes in. The electrical and electronic age, this was the time when Ashot was saying, what unfortunate that I was born and I saw this whole thing, and I think, I'm not going to assign that you were there when the steam engine was born, but the electrical and electronic age, I think, more like it. And this is where we are today, the information and digital age. Unfortunately, we haven't mastered it because I still cannot use a clicker. So hopefully at some point we won't need a clicker, but it tells you that even modern technology with so much advancement, we still cannot get to the optimum usage of these types of technologies. This next one, the age of deliberate evolution, and this is what I want to talk to you about. And the reason I call it deliberate evolution, because essentially up to this point, evolution has been very slow. The survival of the fittest, as you know, you go to the Darwinian as to survival as extinction of species, birth of new species. But in the work that some of our colleagues do today, I see Avak is seated here from Flagship, and Nubar Afeyan yesterday spoke a lot about the work that they're doing at Moderna and Flagship. They probably don't call it this, but they are in this business. And you could look at this and say, this is quite scary, or you can look at this and say, finally, we're at a time where we can actually become the masters of our fate. Not faith, but masters of our fate. So this is what I would like to speak to you about a little bit. But first, to part 2, human. And this part is critical in discussing what's the interaction between human and technology and why that exists in the first place. Now, you have days when you think you're almighty. Nothing can affect you, nothing can impact you. And then you have days when you feel, I'm so fragile. Those of you, I don't know if it is being translated, those of you who are really not familiar with the term fragility, this is very important when it comes to discussion about human, because if you eliminate this part, if you take fragility out of the equation, there is no technological advancement really. I'll speak a little bit more about this, but I want to introduce this part about human that we don't think on a daily basis. We may know about this, but we don't really think about this. And this is about, in extreme situations, we can only last 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Earth is a small blue dot. In early 2000s, I was working at that time with Vice President Al Gore, who actually won Nobel Prize for his work with Inconvenient Truth. And on one of the slides that Vice President will show, in many of the discussions that we were having as a group, it was called Climate Project at that time, one thing was, how is it that you speak about changes on the planet without bringing people to despair? Because there's a fine line between despair and hope. You want people to understand despair, but you don't want them to lose hope. You always want people to have hope. Then, there was this particular slide that you would go out into the universe, and then when you look back at the planet Earth, and it was like a small blue dot, and you've probably seen it in some of the images. It's like a tiny blue dot. I wish I had that image here. It would have been nice. But that small blue dot is where we live, and that's the only place where we can live. So it's very important, this blue dot that we sometimes abuse. But that's not the point that I'm actually trying to make here. What's interesting, the blue dot is not very friendly, really. So humans can only live in a small part of that blue dot. So you can't live below ground, so there is no oxygen, right? 500 meters because of air pressure and oxygen thinness and what have you. So on this blue dot, 2/3 is water. You can't live in the water. Then you have kind of 1/3 of some kind of a mass, but you can't live all around it. You can only live some part of it. It's like a small part of it. It's like functional, where human can actually survive. We need to have 21% oxygen concentration to breathe. You would think, I just need oxygen. It could kill you. Our body temperature needs to be 36 degrees. It's like so many restrictions. Guys, just let me live. It's like I want to live anywhere I want to. I want my body temperature to be over 42, but no, sorry, man. It's kind of lethal. Or if I'm at 21 degrees, then I kind of freeze. So you see, human is actually extremely, extremely fragile even on this planet. So we're not talking about a foreign planet. We're not talking about asteroids. We're not talking about this. We're just staying here. And it becomes extremely complicated when you're looking into all of this and you're saying, how do we deal with that biological fragility that we have? So we need to survive. We need water, we need food, and we need shelter. All of you, all of us. No exception. So this is critical. It creates a need for humanity, meaning no matter who you are, it doesn't matter. You're the Queen of England, President of the United States, the most powerful person, whatever it is, you're going to come back to this every time. This creates scarcity. You know how we think of scarcity? We say, look, this thing exists out there. Maybe it exists in Africa now, maybe some parts of Asia. But, you know, maybe some people can argue it exists here in Armenia. I'm telling you, scarcity exists in every part of the planet. Scarcity exists with Elon Musk, with $250 billion in his account. And then you can ask a question, why the hell does he need $250 billion? He probably doesn't know that either. Well, he can say that because I want to take humanity to Mars. So that's one argument. But in reality, you have this feel of agony that you don't know when your resources are going to expire, when you're going to run out of food, water, and shelter. So you create these redundancies. Constantly you create these redundancies kind of to push the agony of that survival as far away as you can, because if you've got $1 billion, things could happen, and then you can spend all of this money and then get more water, get more food, get more shelter. But if you have $250 billion, you can do a lot more of that. You can get a lot more food, a lot more whatever it may be. At the end, you're coming to that basic biological need. That creates a dependency, that creates scarcity, especially as our numbers grow. We're about 8 billion people, and that number is going to continuously grow. Where it arrives is not relevant. What's relevant, scarcity, as long as we are in this form, is never going to abandon us. So let's talk about then what does that mean for us? So early technologies, and this is where I said, I want to come back to fire a bit later. So when we look at humans, or before Homo sapiens, we have hominids. The first start using tools about 10 million years ago, and this is arguably, it's like when you look at human predecessor, and that's what I'll speak about this in a minute as well. We talk about chimps, apes, whatever it may be, between 6.5 million years to 11 million years ago, when we've kind of separated. One guy decided, I'm going to go left, and then we've come to this 10 million years where we started using the first tools. But then you have, don't go too fast, guys. I'll tell you when to go, but it's okay. Don't move it. This AI doesn't work well. So when we come to a species that is closer to us, now when we talk about making fire is very different than having access to fire, because humans were exposed to fire way before the 600,000 BC. But being exposed to fire because lava happens, or some kind of a lightning happens, and then forests are burned, whatever it may be, then you have fire. So you can then burn wood, whatever it may be. But to actually make fire and to control it, it was essentially the first advancement of technology for humans, because you started controlling a big instrument that allowed you to do so many things with. One of the first signs that human began transforming its biological dependency on the environment, about 600,000 years ago. So then later technologies, I spoke about a little bit about redundancies, help humans to create redundancies. And redundancy here is very simple. So imagine, these guys were able to control fire and started cooking and what have you. What they didn't have is refrigeration, for instance. So you grow all of this food and then you don't know where to store it. So you needed more technological advances for you to be able to store food and to build it, and to build new farming or things of that nature for you to get to those redundancies that I'm speaking about. And the next one is the later technologies. Essentially, next. So this helps you build capacities. It kind of frees you. This is what we speak. The minute ago I mentioned Elon Musk. This is what I mean by creating very fat bank accounts, which kind of frees you up. You start building a financial capacity or intellectual capacity, and then you start doing this barter, or it's like you get compensated for exchanging your. Many of you smart, bright people here, you've gone to school and you've studied for, some of you 20 years, 25 years. Guess why? Because at the end, say, I want to sell this investment of 20, 25 years into my knowledge generation for $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, in Avak's case, $1 billion. So it's really that kind of an exchange that you're looking to make in life. So here, what does future entail for us? And this is where I want to make a point of this separation of scarcity, human dependency, and the reason technology was developed, and the future that is dramatically different than what we imagine and what we think of now. When we think of, for instance, when we think of smart technologies, even renewable technologies, and I want to show you this image. So this is incredible, right? And I bet you the countries, when they install these things, they're extremely proud. And they should be, because now they're becoming carbon neutral. Do you ask a question, how is marine life impacted by this? There's a lot of creatures that live where all of this was built. Or the next image, or this image. You can have all the electric cars you want, but when you cut through forest of this nature, for instance, you spoil soil, wildfires, species die out only because they cannot go from one side to another. Believe it or not, trees do communicate. You cut those types of communications. But as long as we have this need to survive, and this need to survive is in that very nature that we are dependent on food, water, oxygen, shelter. We're always going to transform the environment. So this is going to be continuous. It doesn't matter what we do. It's unavoidable because the way we look at technology and the way we look at human. But what if we started thinking slightly differently? We start the transformation of human. Because if you transform the human, your scarcity immediately disappears. You only have scarcity because you have the need for food, for shelter, for all of these elements that make the human that is. The work that our friends do at Flagship Pioneering, at Moderna, some of the stuff that we've been working here, we try to look at the world that is going to be so far advanced, so far ahead of us, that changes how you think of future, changes how you think of yourself, changes how you think of humanity, changes how you think of a human species. And when it comes to development, when it comes to investment, when it comes to putting resources behind transformational technology, you actually think of transformation of yourself. Now, where it would take you is really all in your hands. What type of species we'll become is also all in our hands. Thank you.